Welcome to part 2 of my Excellence in Selling video series. In part 1, I opened with the creed that I learned from my own sales training mentor, Steve Clark, when he said, selling is a calling, serving is its purpose, questioning is the process, and a sale may be the solution. In that series, I also talked about the 3 Ps, preparation, processes, and that's what leads to profits. So I want to continue this dialogue and look a little more into the processes. If you recall from video 1, I talked about how we as the salesperson are in charge of the structure of the sale, of the prospecting efforts, and the prospect, the customer, is in charge of the content. So I want to go over what I call the sales agenda. You should have received that when you opted in for this video series. If you did not get it, feel free to pause this video, visit thesalesagenda.com, and you'll be taken to a page on my website. It's a free opt-in, and it'll send you a PDF with this sales agenda. Feel free to use it. Feel free to clean it up, put your own logo on it. It's yours to use. Now, this sales agenda I'm going to cover, I did this exactly. I did this verbatim. Everything I teach you, I have done myself. Okay, and it works. So, but this sales agenda is very structured. Sometimes salespeople tell me they don't like scripts or they don't like to follow something like this because they don't feel like they're themselves or it feels too restrictive. And I'm like, look, get over it. Okay, you need to figure this stuff out. And I always ask, how much money does Oprah and Tom Cruise and David Letterman make? Right? They make a ton. They make more than you and me. And how do they make money? By reading a script. By asking questions prepared in advance, good questions, thought-provoking questions, okay? Now, in a B2B situation, business to business, that's how this sales agenda will apply. Now, if you sell business to consumer or any other type of scenario and you think it doesn't apply and you can tune out, you are mistaken, okay? You may want to tone this sales agenda down a little bit, but the point remains the same. The underlying strategy, the overarching principle is the same. You need to have structure in every sales situation. Okay, so the one I'm about to cover with you, the one you get on the salesagenda.com, is exactly what I did when selling to big business. And I'm talking about Dell, Google, large hospitals, large manufacturing entities, even to the military. Okay, I followed this exactly, and I want you to do it as well, all right? Now, in my current situation, I'm able to diffuse a lot of objections ahead of time because I control my own marketing. I control making videos like this. I can control multi-step, multimedia, nurturing and follow-up processes, and I encourage you to do the same. But at the end of the day, when it comes down to brass tacks and you're sitting across the table or you're negotiating a tough deal, you still need to have a structure. And I still follow these types of processes to take control of the selling situation. Okay, so on the sales agenda that you should have in front of you, you'll see at the very top, this is how this would come about. I've batched my prospecting efforts. So by that I mean either I start in the morning or I start late in the afternoon, trying to catch the decision maker alone, right? Try to get them to answer their own phone, which they do early morning and they do in the afternoons when the receptionist is gone. So we're assuming I've got them on the phone and they like what I'm talking about. And now that decision maker is interested in meeting, and I would say something that goes pretty much like this. I'd say, fantastic, I've got you down, for next Tuesday at 10 a.m. In the interest of time, would it make sense that we set a quick agenda for our meeting? That way, we're sure to get the most bang for the buck, right? So something along those lines. But, would it make sense if we set a quick agenda for our time together? They're all going to say, yeah, sure. And I would go through this, and I've got it memorized. You'll have it in front of you. I had it printed, and I would read it, okay? And yes, I was rough in the beginning, but now I've internalized it, and it rolls off my tongue. But I would say, fantastic. Say, look, at the end of the day, the reason we're meeting is to see if there's a fit for us to do business, if there's chemistry, right? If it makes sense for us to do business. And I have two simple ground rules. One, we're open and honest with each other. And two, either of us can end the meeting at any time for any reason. Okay, so there's no reason to drag this out if there's a showstopper and we know it. Okay, now, are you okay with those ground rules? And now you'll hear them go, oh yeah, sure. And this is the kicker right here when I tell them, I am going to show up with more questions about your business than you probably ever thought humanly possible. You may want to write down a few for me. This lets them know that I am not coming over with some 12-page full-color brochure and 84-slide PowerPoint to do some, dance and performance. Then I tell them, say, after I understand your business, your situation, the things you're dealing with, if I think I can help you, that's another key one. If I think I can help you, I will outline some options. In those options, we can talk about budget. We can talk about time frames for delivery and implementation. And at the end of the meeting, we both agree to reach a mutually agreed upon decision as to what the next steps are, even if that means we're not a fit. Does that sound like a meeting you would like to have? Boom, done. Okay, now some people, they may internalize or interpret that final statement, that final question with, you mean I need to make a decision right there if I want to buy? Say, no, not necessarily. And depending on what I was selling, back then I was selling high tech, and I mean, they're not going to order some, $50,000, $100,000, $1 million system right there on the spot. But I would tell them, say, no, but we need to understand what the next steps are. Which brings up a good point, and on a project like this, who do you normally turn to, or who on your team is responsible for, now fill in the blanks? Who on your team is responsible for new hardware implementations or new software deployments or verifying new projects, new infrastructure, right? Whatever phrases and keywords you want to use. You want them to tell you, oh, that's Joe, that's Mary, that's Amy, that's Mark. Say, well, you know what? Would it make sense to have them in this meeting? That way we don't have to cover things twice. Okay, but now at least I know who else is going to be involved in that decision. So then when they say, do you expect me to make a decision right then? Say, no, but I do need you to tell me at the end, is this of interest? And if it is, what are the next steps? Does it have to be presented to a committee, to a board of directors? And if so, when do they meet? What type of authority do you have? Is $50,000, $100,000, or do you need to go to a director or somebody else to get approval? All right, and I'll tell them straight up, say, if you are inclined to tell me that you want to think it over, is it okay if I take that as a polite way of saying no? You're basically just trying to not hurt my feelings to my face, and in reality you mean no. So if you tell me you want to think it over, I'm going to take that as a no, okay? So once we get through that verbal agenda, I then email them immediately. Hey, Joe. Hey, Mary. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me. I have you down for Tuesday next week at 10 a.m. I've attached the agenda that we just reviewed for your records. Let me know if you would like to amend or change or add anything to this. I'll see you next week. And then maybe something like, oh, by the way, I look forward to meeting Mark and Laura and Amy as well. To facilitate this discussion and to accelerate the time, to make a good decision. So when I show up to that meeting, I am going to bring multiple copies of that printed out. And when we sit down, I'm going to confirm with them. Hi, good to see you. Hello, Joe, Mark, Amy, Mary, Laura, everybody. I have us down for an hour. Is that still the case? Okay, the last thing you want to do is be rushed through a meeting. Again, we're assuming this is a decision maker. This is a prospect worth your time, effort, and energy to go after. So you want to make sure you're in control, that nothing has changed. And so they say, yes, of course. Say, do you have a copy of the agenda that we reviewed last week on the phone? Typically, they'll say no. Say, no problem. You open up your folder. Again, you bring 5 or 6 or 10. I always had about 10 or even 15 copies just in a little sheet protector in a little folder that I carried. Say, hey, not a problem. Pass them out. They'll look them over. I'll say, does that look like what we covered? And they say, yes, that's what we agreed to. Say, fantastic. Where should we begin? Because remember, I told them I'm going to have more questions for them than they can possibly answer. So I start with that right there. Where should we begin? Now, if they try to turn it on me, we want to know this or that and the other, say, I'll get to that in a second. But the reason we agreed to meet was because you're having problems with security, with uptime, with cleanliness, with the time and cost it takes to exchange, to move employees, or whatever. I'm going to remember, whoever is in charge of the structure, whoever is asking the questions is in control of the meeting. So we're in charge of the structure, they're in charge of content. I have had people walk into the meeting, some technical dude, and literally arms crossed, kind of lean back in the chair, and I pass out this agenda, and they see that they can end this meeting at any time for any reason. I have seen them visibly perk up, sit up, lean forward, lean into the meeting, and that's what you want to happen. Okay, you want to be asking questions that they can't answer. But you have to let them know that you're different by being different. All the salespeople I've ever spoken to say, oh, I hate this prospecting, but I'm great once I'm in front of somebody. So really? Are you this great? Are you in total control of the situation? This puts you in total control with all the personality types, the drivers, the amiables, the steady relators, the those that want to read the manual. Drive me nuts. We call them see-mores, right? They always want to see more. This helps you take control of the situation with all of those personality types. It lets you know what questions to ask. It lets you know when to ask them. And now you're not on the defensive because you have a room full of prospects. They can ask more questions than you can ever answer. Then you got to start bringing in systems engineers and marketing developers and VPs and presidents and yada, yada. You bring this whole army just to, for the inquisition. If you ask enough hard questions that they cannot answer, they will assume you have the answer and they will listen and they will pay what you ask. So you prove that you're different by acting different. All right. And once you prove that you are different, now price is not as big of an issue. Rarely is price the sole determining factor. Usually it's hardly at all. Obviously, you've got to be within budget. Obviously, you have to show the value. I was selling computer systems that cost 3 times as much as we were in Austin. So Dell's the big one there, obviously. Dell desktops were $600. Our desktops were $1,800. Okay, but if you show the value, if they understand why it's worth that much, price is not an issue. Okay, but until you differentiate yourself, if you look and dress and quack like every other salesperson pushing every other commodity product, the only way they can differentiate you is through price. Okay, so again, you have to prove that you're different by acting different. And following an agenda shows that you're different. Most salespeople will show up and wing it. They'll shoot from the hip. I've gone on detailed, lengthy, important meetings with other salespeople and seen them not take one single note. And it boggles my mind. How can you remember the important things? How can you ask the important questions? And you know what? If this is new to you, you tell them right up front. Not that you're new, right? But you tell them, hey, is it okay if I refer to my notes here? A, that I take notes, I don't miss anything, and B, I've jotted down a few questions. I want to make sure I don't miss anything. Is it okay if I reference those, refer to those? They will always say yes. And if you think that's unprofessional, if you think that's amateurish, let me ask you something. How uncomfortable do you feel when you look up into the cockpit of an airplane and you see those pilots there, both with checklists, helping one another, verifying with each other that each item has been covered? you don't feel bad at all, right? You're encouraged because they did. How amateurish do you think it is when a doctor comes in and goes through the checklist? Any allergies, any family history of this, on and on and on. If it works for pilots, if it works for doctors, if it works for attorneys, if it works for your accountant, right? Why doesn't it work for you? So you've got to get over that. I would rather someone think that maybe I'm new, maybe I'm inexperienced because I'm referencing something, than miss something important and miss the sale or give up margin on the deal. And besides, as soon as you start asking great questions that they can't answer, they will immediately forget or think that you're some type of rookie or a beginner or an amateur. They will know you're a pro by the questions that you ask. So make sure you prepare in advance. So again, we talked about preparation, we talked about process, and that leads to profit. So you're going through the preparation stages now. You're watching these videos. Hopefully you've got the sheet by now. If you don't, again, go to thesalesagenda.com, get that sheet. Feel free to mark it up however you want, print it up on your own, bring it with you, email it, it's yours to use. Okay? So that's the preparation, and that's the process. So make sure you know how to work the phones, make sure you know how to work a room, how to work a trade show, how to get to the decision makers, set firm appointments, and you follow this agenda, you will take control of the situation. You will sell more faster at higher margin with less stress and more fun, and I guarantee it. So if you need to go back and watch video 1, go back and watch the second video. I've got a third video coming up, so stay tuned. I thank you for watching this. Please leave some comments, ask some questions down below. I will get to them. I am monitoring this. I want to help you sell more, faster, at higher margin with less stress and more fun, guaranteed. So avail yourself. Do not feel, again, like a rookie, like an amateur because you asked the questions. You might as well learn the answer now in a safe environment, even though there's kind of some rude people online. I get it. We'll delete the idiots from the comments, so don't worry about that. Ask your questions, and I will see you in video 3. Thanks for watching.